That the authority isn't in the book I'm reading, even though it might be written by what is called the world's grandest authority. The authority isn't in the religious philosophy, even though it might appear that the religious philosophy has worked grand wonders in the world. The authority isn't in the guru at all, but rather, and when you stop and think about it, it's completely logical and completely sensible. The authority resides with the awareness that is perceiving the book, reading the book, enjoying the book, or enjoying the philosophy, studying the philosophy. The authority resides as yourself. And so right now, just let's begin on that note. Authority resides as the very awareness that listens, right here, right now, as yourself. One of the questions I was asked almost immediately on one of the stops, the many stops along the way, was, why should I say the authority resides here is I, and not out there is that? And I'd like to answer that question because it's being thought right now. Why is the authority here as awareness and not out there with somebody in front of the room? If the authority is not out there, what the devil did I come all this distance for and wander up the steps and come to this lovely home to listen to him for? Well, I go back to the basics, to the very beginning of the solipsistic idea, that is, of metaphysics. And it's the root of all of the metaphysicses, if that's the plural, in the world. And it does seem that most metaphysicians are not really acquainted with it. The basis for the metaphysical idea. And let me explain then why the authority resides as awareness, as yourself, and not out with the image. And let's have that clear so the rest of the day can be clear. Right here, right now, awareness is aware. Awareness, that is, we are aware of a voice, we are aware of sentences being made, of words being strung, we are aware, perhaps, of the sound of the ocean outside, the sight of the ocean, the feel of a chair beneath us. We are aware, possibly, of some expectancy, something that is supposed to come from such a talk as this. But now, where do we hear the sounds that we're listening to? Where are they heard? I hear a gull outside. Where do we hear it? Within awareness. It's a thought that dawned, apparently, with all those who have made a metaphysical statement, be it a philosophic metaphysics or a religious metaphysics, or a scientific metaphysics. It's the same thought that occurs. Gee whiz, I'm listening to my own sound. I hear it as I hear it. It's my own sound. Oh, now it seems, well, yes, but there is someone called Bill Samuel in the front of the room who's talking, and he is conveying information. He's relaying an idea. But where does the image of one seated in the front of the room appear? Again, it's a thought so often overlooked. And yet, it is at the root of the birth of the solipsistic idea that is the basis for all metaphysical thought and all religious thought as it's been born wherever it was born. Where do we see the signs? Within awareness. Within which awareness? This one. This one, not another one. Then the intellect of us, so interested in reason and logic, so interested in everything making sense. The intellect says, but How many awarenesses are there? My goodness, there was the Abraham Lincoln awareness. What a brilliant man Abraham Lincoln was. And then there was, back in antiquity, Neanderthal man, who left his artifacts here and there scattered around to be looked at. But, stop and think, just a moment, again. Where have we ever heard about Abraham Lincoln? Or thought about Abraham Lincoln and all that supposedly comprised the awareness or consciousness of Abraham Lincoln? Where? But right here, within this awareness. Not another. Now, inasmuch as almost everyone here has heard me countless times, I know that this seems like I'm talking, repeating old things. But actually, this is the beginning of the solipsistic idea, or the very basis, the beginning of metaphysical thought. So I'm going to start there again, and hopefully I'm going to stay there. And there's grand precedent for that because, well, let's take a religious example. Someone asked Jesus once, one of his disciples, why don't we see these wonders you're telling of? The joy, the peace that's spread over the whole face of the earth, but men perceive it not. Why do you see it? We don't. And then that question was followed by another very quickly. Tell us what our end will be. What death is all about, if you know so much. And his reply was, well, if you're concerned with the end, apparently you've discovered the beginning. And blessed is he who has found the beginning and stays there. You find echoes of this in all philosophy, but in particular you find it in Orientalism, and especially in the Taoist idea. That old librarian friend of mine, Lao Tzu, said, the sage, the enlightened, the redeemed, or whatever, have rediscovered childlikeness. They found the beginning. And they stay there. All right, so the beginning of the metaphysical idea is the discovery that this awareness, it's aware right here, right now, is for each of us, to use that term, for each of us, is alone. It's total. It's only. And it's all-inclusive. All right. These ideas are even intellectually palatable because the intellect of us can, at the moment, examine this and say, yes, yes, I have never heard a sound except as this awareness that's going on right here. I've never seen a sight except as this awareness, my own. Not a feeling except right here is this awareness. The intellect can understand that. And I would suggest that this is the experience when it comes often with full force. Sometimes it comes as something very gentle, but this is what the illuminative experience is making plain. For myself, I can remember a time when I was sitting in a room and I was reading a book. This was sitting in a room, reading a book. I remember the book, I almost remember the page number, but it had nothing to do with metaphysics. But all of a sudden, without bells ringing and without matinals of angels singing and without flashing lights, but just a very gentle, quiet, selfless moment, when there was very little me consciousness on the scene. That is, Bill wasn't thinking of Bill, and Bill wasn't worried about Bill's affairs. But just very gently, I understood that the room in the book was within me, within awareness. And I had a pencil in my hand, and I looked out across the street. I say across the street. That's the only way I can put the words together. But it wasn't across the street. I looked into the awareness that is myself, and there was a tree. And for the first time in my life, I felt and understood that that tree is me. Because where did I see it? But within the awareness I be. Now, that experience will happen for everyone who's here today. It'll happen sometime during the course of the day. Just a very gentle recognition that, my goodness, how simple it is. The whole world unfolds within and as this awareness. That'll happen. I don't know why. I don't know why it happens. But I'm very grateful for it, because I know it is that cornerstone that the builders of institutions and the builders of a great human system and the builders of an ego world have overlooked. Once again, what is basic? This awareness right here, right now, that listens, within which everything unfolds. Everybody with me so far? Will everybody just relax and be gentle with yourself for a minute? And let's not take the next step. How do we know that God is all? Every solipsistic idea that has ever presented itself, and bear in mind, every religion that came along initially presented itself as a solipsism. The Lord thy God is one, is only, is all. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is spread out over the whole face of the earth, or behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, the beginning of Christianity, and so forth. Those of you, scholars of you, can find the solipsistic beginning of all philosophies better than I've just articulated them. All right, now, each of those concepts at some point has said God is all. It simply isn't the truth that Christian metaphysics is the first statement of God's allness. It isn't true. That is, historically, that isn't so at all. The statement of God's allness has been with us forever. All right. I was asked a question. Bill, if I can understand the totality of this awareness, I can understand how I have never been separate nor apart from it, I can understand how all I have ever done has been as this awareness functioning. Even my own view of my body is included within awareness, but awareness is the substance of the body, and awareness doesn't exist because of the body. He says, I can understand all that, but how does this get around to God? Seems to me that this concept of God is quite something else. And furthermore, how can I know that God is all? The digression is so completely different from what I've just said that it's like another thought. So just hold in abeyance what I've said and listen to this just a moment. Once upon a time I went out for a walk early in the morning. And it was down in Alabama. It was about this time of year. The leaves were turning color, and they would crunch underfoot, and the air was moist. It was so early in the morning that the dew was still falling out of the trees, and of course the sunlight was slanting. And like I remember those big trees down at Big Sur, the water falling through those trees as they would fall through the slanting sunlight, it was like a diamond just for a minute. Well, this was my morning that morning. And as I walked along, I happened on a deer. And it was a very thrilling experience to me, because one doesn't just happen up on a so-called wild animal unexpectedly. Usually they know you're there long before and they're gone, or they're hiding and peeping around a tree at you, making themselves invisible. But I happened right on this deer, within just a few feet, and we saw each other at the same time, and he bolted and ran away, scampering with grace and beauty and wonder. And it was accompanied by that thrill that was partially fright. And I thought, since I was a writer, I thought, wouldn't it be grand if I could just write this? Just write this story. Because there are many who don't get a chance like this to walk in the woods. Maybe write it for them. Maybe young people who have never yet found the beauty of a lonely walk in the woods. And then I said, but how can I write with words all this minute really is? How can I include in those words the smell of this earth? How can I write in those words the feel that's right here, this minute, this joy, this wonder, this animal's intense desire to remain anonymous? How can I do that? Well, I went back and I wrote a story about a wood carver that had had just such an experience. And the wood carver's dilemma was, how can I take a piece of wood and carve this wood so that everyone will smell the earth and feel the cool dampness of the morning and the warm sunlight and see that beautiful animal as it darts away and feel the thrill and the joy. And the purpose of that story was included in the last paragraph. I said simply, anyone who would take upon himself to write a book or a poem or paint a picture or anything and say, this is the truth, is taking just such a task on himself, because words are limited. Words appear to be finite. They're created by man. So how can the finiteness of words encompass the infinity? The sound is included within awareness that listens. The authority lies with awareness that listens. And if there is any significance, meaningful significance to the song at the moment that the bird sings, it brings its own thrill with it. And that thrill is beyond reason and intellect. It's beyond all of the intellectual questions. Is it a good bird song? Is it a bad bird song? Does it make sense? We just listen. Well, this God that we speak of as infinite, as ineffable, as omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, Godhead or God or whatever you want to call it, I ask a simple intellectual question right at this moment. Can such an infinity be limited to a lecture or a talk or a seminar that makes sense? Can infinity be brought down to making sense? Clearly, we can intellectually perceive that that's impossible. So therefore, this ineffable, while it includes all that making sense is all about, it transcends it. It is greater than it. Now, the end of the limit of intellectualism, but the continuing arena of that awareness is aware of, for instance, love. There are many things about love that make no sense at all. There are many things about human relationships and about all kinds of activities that really don't make intellectual sense, and yet we know happens or is a part of our experience. So the limit between intellectualism and the other is that arena called mysticism. Just so long as we understand that. The mystical. It's past the reason and logic of intellectualism. So okay, to the very best of my knowledge then, as I talk in those areas that are construed to be super sensible or beyond the limits of reason and logic. I hope to do it in a way that it cannot be misinterpreted. I didn't say it well, but I'm trying to point out just briefly that there is an arena beyond the intellectual limits of making sense. Now, that's the arena I'm going to be talking in the entire time, but I'm going to do it by using analogies, illustrations, and everything that fit the intellectual arena. Now, here's how I found out it communicates, and this is where the term overtones comes in. And while I think maybe in the metaphysical arena no one else has talked about this, it's not new, and it's not anything that hasn't been known for generations by everyone, really. But let me tell you what an overtone is so you can understand what's going on. Now, the overtones are immaculate, to use that word. No words were necessary for the overtone. The overtone clearly comes as one's own. And consequently, one doesn't argue with it. It's his own. And our communication will take place in just that manner. Even as it actually always has for all these 15 or so years I've been coming out this way. The story has never changed. Like the old Sufis, they tell the same stories over and over. But they never tell the story the same way twice. They never tell them in the same order. They seem to tell them to fit the moment. Somewhere along the line, an acceptance is made that an ineffable presence is, right here, right now, all that's here, right now. And when that surrender is made, we begin to live a new experience that is filled with remarkable joy and wonders, and especially a peace that can't be put into words because it's a joyful, childlike, singing peace. So let me tell you what my proof was. First of all, I would like to say that I was backed into a corner and had to accept this concept of God as all, because I had no alternative. That is, I was pushed by dire circumstances and a miserable experience to the point that I finally, in abject surrender, had to give up. But it isn't necessary that we all do that. The surrender can be made without the presence of something that forces us. The surrender can be made voluntarily, I think. And I've seen too many that have done it and have found it. But here then was my proof. How many of you folks here have studied chemistry somewhere in high school or, all right? How many of you studied physics in high school, chemistry college? Well, that's most of you. In the study of the sciences, I don't know if I'm going to say this well or not, but I'll just do my best. It has been determined by all these people who are supposed to be the wizened heads of the scientific community that everything has something behind it being it. For instance, we look at a tree. Okay, we see a tree. The word tree, by the way, is a symbol. And the image we see is a symbol for whatever stands behind it being it. Now, if it happens that we are a chemist and we would say, what is being the tree? Well, we could name the various chemical components of the tree. If we get all the way down to the cellular level, we could say, well, yes, we've got atoms, we've got atomic particles and so forth, or we have a basic energy, which is being the tree. Now, if we pick up a grain of sand, what is being the grain of sand we see? Well, first of all, there is feeling being the grain of sand if we hold it in our fingers, or if it's in our shoes and we feel it when we walk. But more than that, if we get down again to the sub-particles, we could say it's silicone or something, and then we get all the way down to the basic elements of matter, but inevitably we have a something behind the image that we can see that is being it. Now, this can be extended to include all of the images within awareness, whether it's a grain of sand or whether it's Pleiades, whether it's the Milky Way or whether it is the ocean or whether it's just a drop of water or a little something that squiggles in the water with a life in it, whatever, there is something behind it being it. Now, all tangibility, from the least little speck of tangibility to the greatest, has behind it something, an ineffable something in the case of what we call matter, being it. Seems that we wind up with an energy for which there is no real, there are no words to explain it as to what it actually is, if it is known, but there is the presence of something being the subatomic particle. And there's a remarkable sameness about that substance too. We can start out with a mountain and start out with a leaf, but when we get right down to the essences of what it is, we seem to come up with a basic energy or a power. I might not be using all the words that the academe would use here, but I'm trying to be simple about it. Now, for all tangibility, everything we see, everything we have ever seen, there has been something behind it being it. Now, every thought we have ever thought, every feeling we've ever felt, every emotion that has been experienced, there is also behind that a something being it. Now, I'm not talking metaphysics here at all. I'm talking simple high school chemistry and physics. All right, somewhere along the line it seems to dawn and become part of the solipsistic experience that if something is being everything that one perceives, what about the one thing that is most common to all of us? The one thing that seems to be the most important to all of us. The one thing within which every sound has ever been heard, every sight has ever been seen. The most is of all. What about this awareness? Awareness is the most certain is of our experience. Right here, right now, we know awareness is. There are many philosophies on the scene that can come along and say, now look at, awareness right now includes the vision of a lamp or a fireplace or a person, but I can explain that away and prove that there's nothing there. And there are all kinds of confusing ideologies that would come along to say, look, you don't see what you really see. It doesn't appear as it looks. There are other things before the eyes. It is not substantial matter. It is something else. And there are many, many versions. But there is one is that has never been explained away, nor has anyone ever really tried to my knowledge. And that is this awareness is. Or one could say, I can destroy this awareness because awareness is equated with life, and one could say, I can't stand any more of the sights I see and the sounds I hear and the feelings I feel, so I shall destroy this awareness. And so they take out a big gun and they think they're going to destroy awareness. Well, back to the simple intellectual question. If something is being everything that awareness has ever included within it, every thought, every feeling, every sight, every sound, isn't it reasonable and logical? And doesn't it make intellectual sense? And for that matter, isn't it probable, if we want to get the laws of probability into it, a probability carried to infinity, that if an infinite, virtually an infinite amount of matter has something being it, then isn't it almost absolutely probable to infinity that this most is of all is, this awareness that is aware right here, right now, there is an ineffable being, this awareness? Well, to me, the answer is obvious. To me, the answer is yes. To me, whatever the ineffable is that is being this awareness, I call that God. And I'm satisfied that it's here, being this life I am. And that's my proof. And I repeat that at one point in my experience, I finally had to say, all right, if there is an ineffable power being everything I see, then I must either believe or not believe that an ineffable power is being this very life that I am. And so I surrender to that belief. All right, I surrender. And ineffable is being this awareness. And I said, okay, God, you're in charge of it. Whatever God is, whatever this presence is, whatever the power is, it is being this awareness. So therefore, it is responsible for this awareness I am. And when I made that surrender, so finally, and for myself, in desperation, I said, all right, an ineffable is being this life. Therefore, an ineffable is responsible for it. And when I did that, when I finally made that surrender, now what did I surrender? But when I made it, let me finish that. When I made it, it then seemed that this ineffable, this thing that lies beyond words, this ineffable for which there are really no analogies sufficiently good enough, or it rushed in to prove itself to this awareness I am, to prove that it was so. And with that rushing in came what seemed to be the analogies and the illustrations and the examples and the living and the believing and the way to behave and everything else that would support it and allow it to be understood. Okay, I said I made a surrender. What did I surrender? Okay, awareness is aware right here, right now. What is to surrender? What is there to surrender? Right now, what is to surrender? What is there to surrender here? This awareness is total. This awareness that is aware right here, right now, seems to be the functioning of an ineffable mind, to use that term. Mind seems to be a synonym that's been used across the board in all ideologies for God. Well, mind, this awareness is clearly the functioning of mind. Mind and its functioning are one mind. Okay, so what's to surrender? What's to surrender? What? What did I surrender? When I finally gave up and said, okay, I'll buy it. And when I did give up, as I say, the ineffable seemed to rush in to prove with all manner of things. Some that I could talk about, some that I couldn't, some that I've learned to talk about partially, a little bit, but nonetheless rushed in to prove. So what is it? What was surrendered? Now listen just very gently. Right now, this awareness is aware, isn't it? Awareness is aware. To whom does awareness belong? To whom does awareness belong? Oh, now the absolutist can say it doesn't belong to anybody. There's no belonging, there's no possession. And I can go down that road too. But listen, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. To whom does this awareness belong? Well, I can't speak for any images within awareness. I can't speak for any others, but I can tell you what Bill Samuel believed for a long time. That this awareness belonged to me. That this is my awareness. This is my awareness. Why, I even read that it was given to me as a gift, and God gave life to me, and that I am the recipient of life. That Bill is the recipient of life, that this is my awareness. Well, who is this me who says my awareness? Who is he? Well, we've all grown up with that belief. We've all grown up with the idea that this is my life, my experience, my affair, my world. These are my opinions. This is my point of view. This is my line of thought. But who is this me? Again, with the solipsistic experience, one begins to ask that question, who is this me who says my? That the ego, the belief of a me, is what the ego is. All right? So what did I surrender? When I said, all right, this awareness that's aware right here, right now, and ineffable is being this awareness, a perfect ineffable, and ineffable without spot or blemish, is being this awareness. So what was let go? The idea that there was a me on the scene who is custodian of this awareness. Now, that little surrender is possible right here, right now. Because you see, the very instant the me sense is understood for what it is, a belief, and the very instant it's let go, nothing changes as far as what awareness includes in it. The room doesn't suddenly become gold and filled with singing angels and a great experience of light and illumination. That's not a part. Awareness goes right on being awareness. Life goes right on being life. And it includes within it images still. But all of a sudden, when the me sense is let go, and identity switches from this is my awareness to awareness am I, then all of a sudden everything that is included within awareness is what one is. We've all heard the statement from many of the mystical utterances, from many of the philosophic things, the man I see is the man I be. I'm not separate nor apart from the tree. Well, as awareness, we can see that as awareness, we are the images we see. So right now, in order to keep it simple, right now, while it might seem you walked into a room, you brought a body into a room, of course you did, but the body was within awareness. And the room is within awareness. And so now as awareness, one is all that awareness includes within it, including everyone in this room. At this moment, it is not Bill Samuel addressing a group or a door slamming. At this moment, we are looking at ourselves. That is, awareness is beholding its own majesty, its own beauty, its own self-disclosure. Awareness is forever beholding its own qualities and attributes. At this moment, you're listening to yourself. At this moment, I am talking to myself. Now, I know that one can live such a concept because I live it. I know that doesn't make Bill Samuel appear any different, nor look any different. I know that there is still the body consciousness of things and events. There is still the world scene going on. But I do know that it's possible to live as awareness and let go all the aches and pains and anguish and frustrations that is inherent in the belief that this awareness belongs to a fictitious entity that would try with all of its might to lift itself up and be equal to God. It's easy. But as I was asked a little while ago, are there some exercise and are there some things to do? Is there working at it? Well, yes. Sure, we work at it. We go back to the beginning over and over. We keep going back to the beginning. And what is the beginning? The all-inclusiveness of this awareness right here, right now. And what else is the beginning that we go back to? That this awareness is God's awareness going on, for whom God, or the Ineffable, is responsible. We keep going back to that. Now, the next question that the intellect propounds immediately But what about my human responsibilities? This is a course of irresponsibility that you are advocating. And I would point out very gently that it's no such darn thing. To take awareness to be one's identity, and to understand that God and Ineffable is being, a presence is being, this awareness, right here, right now. There comes with that recognition a new view of the same world. Because what is the world? But everything that is included within awareness. But there's a new view of it, an unworried view of it, an unhurried view of it, an ageless view of it, a non-judgmental view of it, a compassionate view of it. Why? Because it's the self we're looking at. And out of that new look, which is without guilt, without frustration, not that we don't have to work at that, but it's without it, we then can see clearly what to do with the most immediate body form that remains within awareness. The one that goes by the name of Jim or Bill or Rachel or Jan or Dion or something. We then know what to do with it. And then we find ourselves engaged in an activity that is most remarkable, called on evermore to explain what is this new point of view.